Welcome to Part C of the Accounting Cycle Practice Set. This practice set is designed to review the basics of the accounting cycle. C continues with the same worksheet that we started in Part A. We also added some information in Part B, and now we will continue with that in Part C. So for this part, we will prepare the income statement and balance sheet columns in the worksheet. We will prepare the income statement, statement of owner's equity, and the balance sheet. And when we complete those statements, we need to make sure that we use proper form. And proper form means that we need to complete a heading for each statement. And at the top of each column, or the first number in each column, gets a dollar sign. And the subtotal or total gets a dollar sign and a double underline. Let's get started. So let's begin with the instructions for the practice set. So here we are at practice set part C. We're going to prepare the income statement and balance sheet columns in the worksheet. The net income should be $5,225. So when we get there, we'll double check it against the figure here. After we do that, we need to prepare the income statement, statement of owner's equity, and the balance sheet. And as I explained just a moment ago, we have to do a complete heading and use a proper form. So after we prepare the statements, the capital balance should be $7,475. All right, so let's go get started. Alrighty, so here we have the worksheet for Gloria's cleaning service. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be completing the income statement column and the balance sheet column. So what we'll be doing is taking all the numbers in the adjusted trial balance and moving them over to these columns. So if it's an account that would normally go in the balance sheet, we move it to the balance sheet columns. If it is an account that's normally on the income statement, then we will move it to those columns. So let's get started. Our first account is cash. It has a debit balance of $5,025. Cash is an asset. All assets are on the balance sheet. So we will column for the balance sheet. Next is the income statement. Same thing, asset has a debit balance. We're going to put that in the debit column for the balance sheet. Next we have supplies. Same thing. Sorry, that should be $25. Okay, so next we have accounts payable, which has a credit balance of $75. Then we have wages payable with a credit balance of $250. And then we have our capital account, $3,000 on the credit side. Now, while these are fairly close to what's going to go onto our financial statements, we don't have an owner's equity statement column on the worksheet. So the drawing account, which would normally go in the owner's equity statement but not the balance sheet, we're going to put it in the balance sheet column. Okay, and it has an $800 debit balance. All right, so those are all of our balance sheet accounts, right? Because we had our assets, we had our liabilities, and we had our owner's equity. So now we move down to our income statement accounts, which are our revenue accounts and our expense accounts. So we're going to move over here. So we have a $6,000 balance in the credit column for service revenue. We have $225 for rent expense. That goes in the debit. Wage expense, same thing, debit. Supplies expense, $50. Okay, now look, our column totals do not agree like they did before. And the reason is because of the net income. On our income statement, we take our revenue, we subtract out our expenses, and we get our net income. So that's what I'm going to do right here. I'm going to take my revenue, the sum of my expenses, and I'm going to come out with $5,275 as my net income. Now my columns agree. If you recall, our practice set said the net income should be $5,275, so we are right on. All right, let's move over to the balance sheet column. So if our net income is a debit for income statement, it's going to be a credit for the balance sheet, okay? Because we will add that net income to our capital account at some point. Here we are. Our columns agree. Awesome. We've got our worksheet done. Now we can proceed to preparing our financial statements. To do that, we're going to click on the Financial Statements tab from the Excel workbook. And this is what it looks like. All right, so let's begin with our heading. Okay, as you recall, the name of the company is Gloria's Cleaning Service. Okay, it's an income statement and it's for the month. Should have a capital. Month ended August 31, 2020. Okay, so our income statement will start with our revenue. So this is our heading. And we only have one revenue account. So we're going to type that out, and it's called service revenue. Okay, since we only, well, let's first talk about these two columns. This is what I call the subtotal column, and this is the total column. If we had 3 or 4 revenue accounts, we would list them. We would put the balances in the subtotal column, make a subtotal, and bring it to the total column. Since we only have one revenue account, we're going to put our revenue right here. Okay, and that's $6,000. Okay, and remember it's got to have a number sign. So, and where we get our numbers is the worksheet. All right, so here's our $6,000. That's where that number comes from. So let's go back to our financial statements. So because we only had one number and we don't need to have a subtotal, we put it in the total column. All right, then we skip a line and we do expenses. Okay, and our first expense is rent expense. You can go back and look at your trial balance if you want. Okay, so we need to make this a number sign. There we go, 225, because the first number in every column needs a dollar sign. Next we have wages expense, and that is $450. And next is supplies. And that is $50. And we're going to give that a bold so that we know that's a subtotal there. And now we have total expenses. And our total expenses is the sum of these three numbers, $725. Okay. And so we're going to put a bold line there. So now I have my revenue and my total expenses. So I'm going to do revenue minus expenses, and that is going to give me my net income. That's going to equal revenues minus expenses. And so we're going to do a dollar sign, and we have to do a double underline. And there we are. Okay, and it agrees to the net income number from our worksheet. All right, $5,275. Excellent. Now let's prepare our owner's equity statement. And remember that that number is going to go into our capital account, right? Because net income is an addition to owner's equity. Okay, so we're going to start with the name of the company. So that's Gloria's Cleaning Service. And it is for the month ended August 31, 2020. All right, so now we don't use the subtotal column in the owner's equity statement. Everything is in one column. So we always start with our beginning owner's equity. So it's G. Spencer and we put capital. And to indicate that it is the first day of the month or the beginning owner's capital, we put August 1, 2020. That indicates that it is the beginning of the month. And remember, this number has to have a dollar sign. So it's actually 0 because this is a brand new company and there was no money in the bank before August, right? So July's ending capital becomes August's for beginning capital, but we weren't in business in July, so it starts out with a 0. So we're going to have some additions. There's only 2 additions you could possibly have. One is an owner contribution and the other is net income. So we're going to do the owner contribution first. And if you recall, how do we find that out? So if we go back to our general ledger and we look at our owner's capital, we did have an owner contribution right here of $3,000. So that's what's going to go here. Okay, we have another addition, and that would be our net income. Because see, we have net income here, and that's going to come down to our owner's equity statement. So our net income is $5,275 for the month. We're not going to put anything in this line, but we are going to have a subtotal. I guess I'm going to. Okay, so that's going to indicate that you can see that there. That indicates that these are added together. So that's $8,275. So now we're going to do our reductions. Okay, and we only have one, but let's step back. There can only be 2 reductions. And the 2 reductions are owner's draw, so when owner takes money out of the business, or a net loss. Okay, you can't have both a net income and a net loss, so we know that we already had net income, so there is no net loss. But the owner did withdraw money from the business, so we're going to say G. Spencer drawing, and she withdrew $800. Okay, I'm going to. And next is G. Spencer, comma capital, August 31, 2020. And that indicates that's our capital balance at the end of the period. So I'm going to borrow this formatting. And it is, okay, $7,474. Now remember, our instructions gave us a check figure. So here it is. The check figure for capital should be $7,475, and that's exactly what we have. Okay, so now we can move on to doing our balance sheet. So once again, we have to type in the name of our company, and just something to note. The income statement and the statement of owner's equity are always for the same period of time, and they are for periods of time. So that net income we earned is for the month of August. This owner's equity statement is for the month of August. A balance sheet is always as of a specific date. So in this particular case, I didn't want to do that. So this is going to be as of August 31, 2020. So your balance sheet is always as of a specific date. And that date is always the last date of the period for the owner's equity statement and the income statement. All right, so we start with assets. And the first asset is cash. And remember, the assets are listed in the order of liquidity. Liquidity means how quickly can that asset be converted to cash. Now, since we have a bunch of assets, we're going to put them in the subtotal, and then our total will go out here. I also have to add a dollar sign. Okay, so there we have that. So the next one is accounts receivable. And accounts receivable is 2,750. And once again, all these numbers come off the worksheet. Then we have supplies, and that's $25. I'm going to borrow that formatting. Okay, that indicates that we have a subtotal, and our total assets are $7,800. We could also sum it to double check that our math is correct. There we are. And I'm going to borrow that format. Okay, that's the asset section of the balance sheet done. Now we're going to skip a line, and we are going to do the liabilities and owner's equity section. Okay, so our first part of that is the liabilities, which is our first one's accounts payable. Once again, that's going to go into our subtotal, and that's $75. I need a dollar sign, so I'm going to borrow that format. Next is wages payable, and that's $250. That's the only two liabilities, so we're going to add them together, and we get total liabilities. Sorry, I gotta move that up one. And our total liabilities are $325. All right, so we're going to then skip a line, and we're going to do owner's equity. And that's G Spencer Capital, and that's $7,475. Okay, so I put a solid line there to indicate that these two are not now going to get added together. We only have one equity account, which is G Spencer Capital. So next we're going to have total and owner's equity, and that is going to equal this plus this, and we're going to copy that formatting, and our balance sheet balances. Pretty cool. Now we have all of our financial statements done. our worksheet is completed, and that is everything from Part C. So now your practice set is fairly well done. All that's left are the closing entries. And then you have to post the closing entries till the general ledger and then do the post-closing trial balance. So that is the next part.